Hello everyone, welcome back to the new news, and my name is Paul. I hope that everyone is having a fantastic day. Congratulations, you have made it to Friday officially. It should be the end of the workday for everyone at this point. And I hope that you guys have been safe. I hope that your friends, your family, and of course you are safe. And if not, I hope that you all find that safety and security in the very near future. There's been a ton of stuff that has happened over the last 24 hours regarding the news inside of Ukraine. A lot of very terrible things, and there's been a lot of support for Ukraine as well. There's a lot of pretty terrible stuff ongoing in the news, though, as that is usually what makes the headlines and what we end up finding throughout the world as we conduct our research. And the fact of the matter is that while there may be a lot of terrible things, the good thing about this channel and the community that has been built upon it, you guys have built an awesome and amazing community, is the fact that we're able to be the news that gives back. And we're only able to do that thanks to you guys. The thing is that with this, if you check out in the video description below, you're going to see a ton of different charities. 100% of everything we do is for charity. We're never doing super chats on this channel. We're never doing anything like merchandising or anything. 100% of everything we do is for charity. And we plan on, at one point, hopefully being able to put charity fundraisers directly onto the stream. And the thing is that we are able to give back to the very news stories that we are delivering here every single night. So when it comes to these, if you can't give a lot, give a little. If you can't give anything at all, that's perfectly okay too. Help us grow as a channel and by liking, subscribing, and letting your friends know about us. And ultimately, the more people that come here and come and enjoy the way that we deliver the news, also the bigger the community becomes, the more of an impact we'll have overall on helping people. One of the channel goals at this point is to raise $1 million through fundraisers on these streams. And so I would love to be able to do that once we're able to actually put fundraisers directly onto the streams. And the only way we can do that is with your guys' continual support. For those that don't know, there's been several major developments for the channel. Last night, we got an insane amount of views. I didn't realize the kind of views we were getting until afterwards. Over 800 views. To give you an idea, our average views for a channel is like 50, and that's on like a good day. Which I'm not here to rant about analytics, but that means that this is doing good. It means amazing things for the community. It means great things going forward. We are officially over 100 subscribers, so thank you very much. I cannot thank you guys enough. The continuing growth of this channel is something that we have been, working towards, the whole team, and it's not just me and Riley, but there's a whole other team. Kason, who's another moderator, researcher, and translator for us. Steve, who's been amazing. Dan, who's also amazing as moderators for us. Everyone has worked very hard for all of this, and I cannot thank you guys enough for supporting the channel, for supporting the endeavor to try and raise money for charities, and to continue supporting the staff especially. And please give a big hand to them, as they're the ones that really make this possible. But thank you so much. We're at officially 110 subscribers. Hopefully that grows even more day by day, and before you know it, we'll be able to do those huge fundraisers and make a huge difference in people's lives throughout the world. When you're checking out these organizations, we do have gaps in where we have coverage, and that is because a lot of places it's very difficult for us to independently research. So if you don't have, or if you have an organization that we may not, for somewhere, say South America, say Africa, anywhere in Africa, Southeast Asia, it doesn't matter. Please get onto our Discord. The link's also in the description. Of course, you can also join the very active and awesome community that's been built by you guys there. But also, get in touch with a staff member. Send that over to us, and send us a link to that charity organization, and give us kind of a short summary. We'll start getting the vetting process ready for those. 80% of all the organizations that we have in the description, they actually go, or 80% of their donations actually go to charity, actually go to their programs. They don't go to things like salary and administration's costs. Once again, the main purpose of this channel is to raise money and help people throughout the world. So thank you very much for everyone's continual support. I please implore you, as we're getting ready to move into the news here, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to direct them at Riley, who is the moderator that helps me with all of this and all of your questions and comments. I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. My background, for those that are kind of wanting to kind of give you an idea where to direct your questions. I was an O-352 anti-tank missileman in the United States Marine Corps between 2016 and 2020. I did 2 tours to Iraq and Syria, and I am a subject matter expert in anti-armor warfare and armor doctrine. And of course, I was an infantryman, so I can answer many general questions regarding infantry and general tactics and methodology of warfare at much more of a tactical level than strategic, but I'll give it my best shot at the higher levels as well. I have a very big interest in history, though I am not, I did not study in any sort of professional manner in it. So other than that, so please go ahead, ask your questions. I'll answer them to the best of my ability. And without further ado, we're going to jump right into the news. And there is a ton of it as we start to move directly into Ukraine. And of course, we have our first 5 points up here in Kyiv. Kyiv has had several major announcements that have been ongoing throughout the day today. And the first one's pretty cool because it actually has to deal with one of the organizations that we've been supporting since we started the channel, and that is the World Central Kitchen, or the WCK. And the World Central Kitchen literally responded to the war in Ukraine on day one. They were already there. They arrived in Poland and immediately started setting up everything for them. They're, according to Jose Andres, who is the head of the World Central Kitchen, is a world-renowned chef who founded this organization. They are in roughly 1,500 different locations throughout Europe, with direct support of Ukrainian refugees as well as internally displaced people. They were the first ones really to respond to the humanitarian situation as a result of the war, and they were also the very first ones to go into Bucha and Irpin and Hostomel immediately following their liberations. They were the very first organization to actually make it there. That was like a charity organization to give food to people that were just brand new liberated. In fact, they actually took pretty severe damage to some of their vehicles due to a lot of the obstructions that they were running into. They blew like all 4 tires on some of their vehicles trying to move in there because nothing had been cleared yet, and the Ukrainian forces had just declared it safe for anybody except for the military to actually go in there. So anyway, today, this organization, Jose Andres, as well as a couple of other chefs that are with him and organizers that are with him, actually went and met with President Zelensky today. They actually went and he was talking to them about the work that the World Central Kitchen had been doing throughout his country and what they've been doing to support the Ukrainian refugees. And it's pretty amazing to see this. Once again, we do actually support them. You'll actually find their link in the description below. So if you want to go and support the World Central Kitchen and their efforts, it's an amazing organization, and I 100% believe in what they're doing. So it's pretty awesome, but we can actually check it out here with that meeting with President Zelensky, at least a portion of it. If it wants to load, because for whatever reason, Reddit's been a little slow at bringing up videos today. Come on, there we go.
Julia, Katia, President Zelensky, your president, our president. You're welcome. Everybody. 24 hours a day for 150 days. We stopped 2 weeks ago because now the need is different. We were in 1,700 shelters. Now we are in 1,000 something. 1,500 every day. We came into Poland the first day of the war.
Yeah.
We began feeding 1,000 meals the first day. So you're winning the war, and you will win the war not only because the great men and women fighting it, the people fighting it also with will and food, as you know. But it's unbelievable. But for me, this was a way to show example to USAID, to World Food Program,
how to work,
what they had to do. We have it digitalized. We have it. Keep the restaurant paying the salaries.
You did big job.
So it's pretty amazing. And like he said, like we came in and we were the first ones in there, and we paved the way to show the World Food Program and the U.S. aid, which is the humanitarian mission for the United States as an agency, on what they needed to do to actually successfully bring aid to the people. And as we see, the humanitarian efforts inside of the country are quite monumental. It's quite a monumental task, but these organizations are quite up to the challenge, and we continue to see that day in and day out. World Central Kitchen, even some of their locations have been directly shelled by Russian troops as they are operating throughout the country of Ukraine, most notably up in the Kharkiv Oblast, where major shelling actually struck and killed a couple people at one of their sites. So pretty impressive. The amount of work and effort and the amount of risk that the World Central Kitchen especially has actually gone into putting their people through and have been willing to go through in order to deliver quite vital food and water aid to people all throughout the country of Ukraine. Child casualty report is another thing that we get almost on the daily at this point, and finally they kind of start linking two reports together at this point. This is coming from the press service of the Ukrainian Parliamentary Commissioner for Human Rights, and they have stated, quote, "Since the beginning of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, 361 children have died, 703 children have been injured. Most victims among children are from the Donetsk region. In addition, as of August the 11th, 204 Ukrainian children are reported missing, and 6,159 children have been deported," meaning they've been forcefully deported back to Russia in violation directly of the four Geneva Conventions of 1949. We continue to get additional updates as there seems to be a war on several fronts, and one of those being a war on education. Quote, "Since the beginning of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, Russian troops have destroyed 286 and damaged 2,321 educational establishments in Ukraine." And that's coming from the press service of the Prosecutor General's office. It's also a war on culture in Ukraine as well. Quote, "Since the beginning of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, Russian aggressors have committed 464 war crimes against Ukrainian cultural heritage," the official website of the Ministry of Culture and the Information Policy of Ukraine. So, very disastrous in many aspects of Ukraine, quite literally adding up to what you could consider crimes against humanity under the definitions of the Geneva Conventions and under the definitions established by the International Criminal Court regarding their human rights violations and regarding war crimes, human rights abuses, crimes against humanity, genocide, and ethnic cleansing. We've gone through that right here on the channel. Several days ago, we went through their actual definitions as posted by the United Nations and by the International Criminal Court, and found, in fact, many of these aspects that the Russian forces have pretty much done nothing more than go down it like a checklist. It's quite disturbing, the amount of crimes and horrendous things that have been ongoing inside of Ukraine over the last 169 days of this war. But not everything is bad. Of course, Skynet still sucks. So why does Skynet suck, and what is Skynet? It's an affectionate terminology. Of course, it harkens back to the Terminator franchise, but it's actually known as the Basic Skills Trainer, or the BST, for the Javelin weapon system. The FGM-148 Javelin is a medium anti-tank weapon system that has been heavily utilized by the Ukrainian armed forces and has been very successful in destroying Russian armored vehicles. All hail our patron Saint Javelin. And so the wonderful thing here is that Skynet is what is affectionately known as by students and instructors within the schools of infantry, both East and West, for the United States Marine Corps. So when I went through, we called this Skynet. It's what our instructors had called it, and that's because the basic skill trainers are exceptionally picky when it comes to the tracking gates, which is how you lock on to a target, and their target acquisition. It's very, very difficult to successfully get a hit. I would say, it's many times more difficult to actually successfully destroy a target on the BST than it is in real life. It's much more difficult, it's much more picky, and that is to improve gunner accuracy overall. The system can do a lot of things. It covers a wide range of realistic training to be able to do with the Javelin system, including everything from target acquisition to major malfunctions of the weapon system, so that way you can practice your protocols for if your weapon system or the missile itself fails. Target, once again, target acquisition, engagement of enemy armor, engagement of bunkers and fixed defensive emplacements, and even engagement of enemy helicopters, because you can actually shoot down low, slow-flying helicopters with the Javelin missile system. Believe it or not, you can use it as a man-pad in certain situations. And all of these, instead of using actual javelins and burning up the valuable portable batteries for the clue system, which is the actual target designation system for it, then you're instead just using a computer, essentially. And they actually have a video of what the BST is, and this is from the Ukrainians themselves, because I don't think we would be willing to show this to the public, but they certainly are. So this is actually from the computer screen. The computer screen actually shows it's how you select what kind of a scenario you're going to play through, but it also will then pull up, this is what the gunner sight picture is. This is what it looks like when you're looking inside of a Javelin, and it shows up on the computer monitor so that the instructor can actually watch what you're doing in real time and see what you're doing inside of your own weapon system and how you're doing trying to function said weapon system. So it's pretty cool. Take a look.
Левее, да, вот тут где-то должны появиться, вот тут. Вон пыль одна стоит. Танк не попробую на 572 якийсь. Таку готовий. Это вообще какая-то ракетная установка, я думаю. Есть.
So, what is being done here? And I know it's not the most active video in the world, but first of all, what he does is he's in wide field of view right now, is what it's called, WFOV, which is actually what you see up here, WFOV, wide field of view. He then switches it and he zooms in. This puts it in narrow field of view, and he thinks he sees it uses infrared, or basically it can detect heat off of a vehicle, and it picks up the heat on the vehicle with this sight picture that he has, and it's a thermal imager, so he can switch between white hot and black hot, and he then sees, okay, well, it's very difficult with this terrain. Switches it over to black hot. Clearly identifies a T-72 tank, which is what this is supposed to be depicting. It's actually a lot more clear if you see it in person. It's a T-72 tank coming over the horizon. Now what ends up happening is he engages the seeker. You hear what's called a wolf's howl. That's actually what it sounds like when you activate the missile itself, and it starts to cool down. So it cools down inside the tube with the use of a certain gas, and then now he goes into a different view called a seeker view. This is exactly what the missile sees. It's actually the camera on the front of the missile, and he now gets track gates. He now gets to change these track gates in order to lock onto the target, which he attempts to do for quite a long time. And he finally gets it. He gets on target and watches it, and it's an effective BDA. Now, if it was me, I would immediately not watch the missile, because the thing is, the Javelin is fire and forget. The missile's going to track the target. You don't have to watch it go there. I understand the need for battle damage assessment, but you should be immediately rolling that missile off of you, disconnecting it, and moving on. The tube is useless. Leave it behind. You really don't need to save that. It can't be reloaded anyway, but it's very effective. It's very cool to actually show, because a lot of people wonder, what does the Javelin look like? All this stuff is in the publications, the official publications. You can even get online. So it's interesting to be able to actually show it in a video format and kind of go through and explain a little bit of how the Javelin works. But it is very difficult. It's glad to see that he did get a hit, but Skynet still sucks. I have missed many a Javelin shots on Skynet, and I would not consider myself a bad gunner, as I've never missed one in person. So, pretty, yeah, no thanks. So that's actually misplaced. I'm sorry for that. So we move on over here into the Kharkiv Oblast. And what we see is that a couple of different things have developed. First of all, 2 Russian cruise missiles were shot down. Quote, Ukrainian Air Defense Forces shot down 2 Russian cruise missiles in the Kharkiv region on August the 11th. Press service of the Air Force Command, and that's coming from the press service of the Air Force Command of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. But that doesn't mean missiles did not get through, because we do know that they did. In fact, Kharkiv today received 4 different missile strikes within the city, and that is coming as of tonight. And the fact is that the extent of the damage to this point is only known to have damaged a residential complex in its courtyard. There are no casualties thus far reported, but that we are able to kind of take a look at some of the damage that has been inflicted. It seems to be relatively minor considering the missiles that have been fired. But still, Kharkiv is no longer tactically or strategically viable for the Russian Federation at this point in the war. They have been pushed so far back that their standard conventional artillery is no longer within range of Kharkiv, and they must rely on converted S-300 and S-400 missile batteries, originally intended for air defense purposes. Those are now been converted into ad hoc ballistic missiles, as well as Iskander-M missile batteries, all of which are being fired from in or around the Russian city of Belgorod. Avdiivka here, unfortunately, seems to have been yet another city which is victimized by the use of thermite munitions. Thermite burns at roughly 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and it is extremely, extremely dangerous. The only way that this stuff can be put out, really, is by actually it burning out its own chemical reaction. There's no real other way to put it out. Thermite is extremely dangerous. It's used for demolitions. I was taught how to use a thermite grenade as well. But the Russians use them, they airburst them over an area and rain down thermite over a large expansive area, usually a heavily concentrated civilian population. The issue with that is that is a war crime on several levels. And that actually breaks Protocol 3 of the Geneva Conventions. It breaks the Geneva Conventions themselves just because they don't limit it. It breaks Protocol 1 of the Geneva Conventions. And it also breaks several different rules within the customary international humanitarian law, which you can actually go and find on the ICRC website, or the International Committee of the Red Cross and the Red Crescent. But just take a look. We continue to see this being done over and over again. These aren't fireworks, folks. These are 4,000 degrees of burning fragments of thermite falling down on somebody's homes, and it's meant to catch fire over a large period or over a large area. And once again, we continue to see this used over and over and over again. We've seen it used in Popasna. We've seen it used in Avdiivka. And now we see this used in Andriivka. And of course, we've also seen it used, probably the most widely seen to have been used, over the Azovstal during the last part of the Mariupol campaign for the Russian Federation, when they were literally carpet bombing the Azovstal and then dropping incendiary munitions to literally burn them out. Once again, breaking the Geneva Convention. And they also filmed it all and put it all over RIA as propaganda. Not something to do if you are intentionally, trying not to perpetrate war crimes and trying to, call somebody a bunch of Nazis. You don't immediately then perpetrate a bunch of war crimes and use it as propaganda. But the Russians seem to do it anyway. As we move down here, over by Isium, in this sector of the front line, there's been a lot of, it's been very highly contested since the opening of the Donbass campaign. Major gains were made by Russian forces during the early part of the campaign and the offensive, but since then they have essentially completely stalled. A lot of this is due to troop losses and lack of ability to actually resupply their forces, as well as major objectives being then replaced in other locations, such as during the Battle of Severodonetsk, Lysychansk, and other locations across the front. What we see here now is the fact that Ukrainian forces are basically whittling down whatever Russian troops are conducting minor offensives within this area. Once again, it appears that a T-80 has gone out and on its own and was successfully hunted down and destroyed by a Ukrainian Javelin hunter-killer team operating within this region, obviously using that very coveted weapon system to great effect. And we actually have that video here. So not only did we get to see what they are doing in training, but now we get to see what the results of that training looks like. So it looks like it's possibly 2 crew members that were killed in this, at least according to this Reddit post, though it's questionable as to how true that may be. But we'll go ahead and take a look. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, this does have some copyright audio. You can see that's the Javelin. He's doing a top-down attack with this thing, and you can see the brownout or the actual dust coming off the back of this vehicle. He gets a successful hit on that Javelin shot. Nice clean hit right through, it looks like the rear of the tank, which would have been the hottest portion with the exhaust. And the tank stops and continues to try and move. You can see it smoking out the turret. And what's happening is now there's a bunch of hot metal that's just spewed all over the inside of the tank. It immediately starts to burn itself out as that engine and the crew compartment has now caught fire. Probably has killed several of the crew. I'm going to guess and say the tank commander and probably the gunner are both dead, as we see the driver bailing out here. And what's happening is now all of this is all that smoke and everything. This hot metal, the molten armor from the rolled homogeneous steel on this tank, and all of the copper jet from the actual penetrating munition actually is basically thrown itself like hot lava over the inside of the tank. Probably killed the gunner, probably killed the crew commander, the only survivor being the driver, who is in the front of the vehicle. And it's now heating up and setting fire to any fabric or anything inside, but also all of the ammunition inside of the auto-rotating carousel that's ready to go at the bottom. It's exposed and would have been completely covered by any of that got inside of the crew compartment, and therefore this thing is probably going to blow its top off, quite literally. The turret will go up to like about 200 feet in the air and just be spinning like a ragdoll. That's where the famous Ukrainian tank turret throwing contest has come from. And we are it probably joined the contest quite shortly after that video. The Russians themselves are also filming several things. According to the Russian Federation, they are conducting urban fighting inside of Solidar. This comes as part of a major campaign within the region of about Bakhmut, anywhere from Solidar down to Donetsk, which we see Russian forces have begun major offensive operations. We've had the precursor bombardments, the probing attacks, the main offensive, and a surge of troops into the area. And now we have urban fighting here inside of Solidar. But on the outskirts of town, there is still resistance in many locations. One of the videos was taken by Russian forces and was later then republished by RIA Novosti, which is a Russian state-run news media organization, as these Russian troops were engaging the Ukrainian troops in offensive operations. So we actually have that video for you here, right off from RIA themselves. So go ahead and take a look.
Скажи, когда стрелять, я их не вижу. Я их не вижу, понял. Доброе утро. Опа, блядь.
So it's a little bit different than what we normally see. We normally don't get to see a lot from the Russian perspective, at least not anything that we usually consider legitimate, like the Chechens, which are pretty much just a TikTok army at this point. They're nothing really more than a joke. But we don't really get to see a lot from the Russian perspective regarding this war. And it's a little bit more interesting to see how they're operating. That one seemed to be a little bit more clean cut than most of the footage that we've seen thus far. And it seemed to have just been kind of a hit and run on Ukrainian defensive lines. You got to remember, a lot of these areas have pretty good static defensive lines within them, making them very difficult to penetrate by any kind of opposition force or offensive operations. So we were going to see a lot of usage. I don't understand why, unless he's actually hitting a vehicle, I don't understand why he's using a high explosive anti-tank warhead, but he is nonetheless. As we continue down the front here, we of course get our daily Donetsk update is back once again, and once again coming from Pavel Korolenko, who's the head of the Donetsk Regional Military Administration. Quote, Russian aggressors fired missiles from the Donetsk region on August the 10th. 11 people were killed and 8 citizens were injured. Unfortunately, this is kind of a daily occurrence, enough for Donetsk that Pavel Korolenko releases a daily update 24 hours after he has better verifiable information regarding what's going on inside of his area of command. And we get that every single day, 24 hours after the fact, where we're hearing day in and day out of losses of vast losses of life and a lot of injuries from amongst the civilian population. Donetsk was a hotbed of activity and all around, as Ukrainian forces are on the outskirts of Donetsk. They have been able to kind of maintain control of Avdiivka and Pisky here. The issue is that we're seeing a lot of different issues with that, and we're seeing a lot of Russian pushback regarding this, trying to kind of free up these areas and trying to release some of the pressure that Donetsk has on it. These areas, especially around Donetsk, are very static. They have been areas that have been fought over since 2014, and there's very strong static defensive lines on both sides that are heavily utilized. But we see Ukrainian strikes hitting areas around Donetsk, causing rather significant damage to a lot of their logistical infrastructure. Meanwhile, the Russians are trying to push the Ukrainians back by shelling their military, or by shelling their defensive locations, which is what we see here at Avdiivka. Once again, pretty heavy bombardment. It looks like saturation bombardment by BM-21 Grad systems actually hitting here in Avdiivka as they're trying to push these Ukrainians out of their defensive postures and their defensive emplacements and actually try and retake Avdiivka, trying to release some of that stress on that sector of Donetsk. And this is what we see here. And as we can see, there seems to have been several significant hits here as fires are currently raging there in the background. But they have a lot of footage of a lot of artillery strikes coming in. That first video was 1 minute and 40 seconds long. This one goes on for an additional 47. Remember, you guys can also go onto our website, and we actually upload before the stream every single day the map. So if you want to go any more in depth with any of the articles we have listed, or if you want to check out any of these after the fact, we actually have it all listed there on the map that you can view on our website as well. But to move on, where were these being fired from? Well, actually from inside of Donetsk, except they're using... Amnesty International released a rather controversial statement that regarded Ukrainian troops in placing themselves near civilian populations, and that was increasing the risk of the deaths of civilians due to Ukrainian tactical actions. And the thing is that they didn't really say anything about Russia. Well, there's a lot to be said about Russia. Russia constantly accuses Ukraine of using human shields, but yet here we are. And here, this is in Donetsk. These are photos from Ukrainians living in Donetsk, and they are watching as grad systems are shooting over their house. Just take a look. This is using as people as human shields. Quite literally. What does this mean? Well, that means that if Ukraine conducts counter-battery artillery fire, meaning they find out where this artillery came from and they shot back to destroy this BM-21 Grad system, they have a good likelihood that they could possibly injure or kill civilians in the process. That is why the Russians are doing this. And this isn't the first time we've seen it, and it's not the first time we've seen it in Donetsk either. But they also probably aren't getting a whole lot of ammo to keep up that steady rate of fire, because it looks like an ammunition hangar or an ammunition trucks inside of a hangar at the Donetsk International Airport was actually successfully destroyed in a Ukrainian strike. The Donetsk International Airport has been pretty much totaled since 2014. But the fact is that the Russians are still trying to find a place to store a lot of their weapons, equipment, and ammunition here in the Donetsk, as is a very strategic hub for logistics and command and control. But what we see here is that may not have worked out very well for them. Just take a look.
Хвостовик, кстати, с номером, даже номер видно. Так, а это все, что осталось. Вон, там, не знаю, Урал, наверное, был. Здесь был, хер его знает, газон, наверное. Здесь вообще непонятно, что было. Судя по мостам, это ГАЗ-66, наверное. Это позавчерашний прилет. О, ЗИЛ почти целый, почти самый целый, блядь. Так.
To say the least, there's not much of a building left, nor is there much to resemble a vehicle there, except for some very, very heavily warped chassis. Yeah, ammunition will do that to you. So, once again, more ammunition and more logistical infrastructure has been destroyed by Ukraine and around Donetsk. But the horrific things around this area do continue. Thermobaric munitions were used against a Ukrainian-held town near Donetsk. The TOS-1A uses an aerosol composite munition that actually it spreads a flammable liquid throughout the air, and then milliseconds later detonates that, and it basically sucks all the oxygen out of the air at such a speed that it will just quite literally suck the air out of your lungs. It's called people call it the vacuum bomb. People call them flamethrower tanks. It's a lot of things, but it's horrendous no matter what way you look at it. Thermobaric munitions are questionable in their use to begin with, especially when you're talking about bombing a civilian populated area. PISKY, which is just outside of Donetsk and is on the southern, kind of the southwestern side of the city. Ukrainian troops have been there. They have been holding that area quite well, but the entire city has been completely destroyed by thermobaric munition strikes, which we actually have the video of here for you today. At this point, we don't know the amount of casualties on either civilians or Ukrainians, but we can probably deduce that it is quite significant. So this is coming from a drone system hovering above PISKY as these strikes are coming in. And you can see those thermobaric munitions are coming in quite hot. The Russian Federation actually advertised the use of these TOS-1A systems here on PISKY. If you try and look at it, it's labeled as the Sands in a lot of channels. So if you're seeing anything labeled as the Sands, they're talking about this city specifically, or PISKY, which has been completely and utterly just demolished at this. Once again, for all intents and purposes, this village does not exist anymore. But you can see quite the ferocity of the TOS-1A bombardment in this city. So, unfortunately, PISKY does not look like it is currently really in existence anymore. And as we can see here, this is from the pre-war. There was obviously some damage from 2014, but you can see where there's still plenty of people living in this village, and it's still rather active as well. The further and further away from the front that you actually get, and you see quite a significant amount of damage in that video to suggest that that city is, whatever life was left has been extinguished. Russia's currently accusing Ukraine of using cluster munitions within the Donetsk Oblast, using what they call butterfly mines. It's a type of cluster munition that lays a lot of landmines, very small landmines, known as butterflies, all around a given area. Thing is that it is plausible, as neither Ukraine or Russia are signatories of the Ottawa Conventions banning cluster munitions and landmines. However, we have yet to see Ukraine utilize cluster munitions at any point in this war thus far, 5 months in. And the fact of the matter is that we have seen the Russian Federation use cluster munitions quite heavily throughout the duration of this war. We also know that they have a willingness to do so, as the precedent of them using cluster munitions was not only set in Chechnya during the First and Second Chechen Wars, the late 90s and early 2000s, but also in 2016, most importantly, at the major bombing campaign of Aleppo in Syria. Quite a significant bombing campaign that left hundreds, if not thousands, of Syrians either dead or severely injured, and much of the infrastructure of Aleppo, which for all intents and purposes was essentially annihilated under the bombing campaigns by the Syrian National Army and the Russian Federation combined. But we can see this here. This is coming from the Russian Federation's mission to the OSCE. When it comes to which one we could have pulled this from, it didn't really matter. We had every single organization within the Russian Federation actually talking about this and basically posting the same thing over and over again, to the point that they were copy and pasting things in their actual description. So the armed forces of Ukraine have stepped up the terrorist practice of remote mining of territory at a considerable distance from combat areas. On August the 8th, anti-personnel mines, the PFM TAC-1 Petal, were scattered over Donetsk. This brutal action is clearly directed against the civilian population. Once again, we have seen the use of these Petal mines once again, or the butterfly mines as they have also been known, and we've only seen the Russian Federation having used cluster munitions in any capacity throughout this war directly. That doesn't rule out Ukraine doing so, but it is rather highly unlikely, I would say. Neoplane Ticket asks, does the West have any comparable systems or munitions? The United States does. The United States does because the United States is not a signatory of the Ottawa Convention. The United States does, from my knowledge, have cluster munitions. I can't speak on it too heavily because I've never seen them used. In fact, even though the United States isn't a signatory of the Ottawa Conventions, they do follow them. And that is the important thing within that. The United States has landmines. In fact, we send Claymore mines to Ukraine. The thing is that we don't self-trigger them. We have a detonator. We're taught as infantrymen. Everyone is taught in their school of infantry to use Claymore mines and how to set them up and place them and all that. But we never learn how to set them up with, say, a tripwire or anything. I don't think they actually have lasers like they do have in Call of Duty. But with tripwires or anything self-triggered, we can't do that. We don't get issued those kind of mines. I've never seen tripwires set up for a Claymore ever. I've only ever seen it done with physically having to see the enemy, get in front of the mine, and then having to physically manually detonate that munition itself. And that's the only mine that I've actually ever seen outside of improvised explosive devices that were set in place by insurgents. So I've never seen landmines used personally in a self-triggering capacity outside of improvised explosive devices, which usually are self-triggered. The thing is that I'm sure the U.S. does maintain them for the unfortunate fact that they're not a signatory of the Ottawa Convention, because there may come a time or place where the United States deems it reasonable to use them. Whether or not I believe in that is my own personal opinion, but it's not to be shared here on this channel. As we move on from there, we continue down on the front, and we see that a Ukrainian soldier here had a pretty near-death experience. So a piece of shrapnel lodged into his military baseball cap. You want to talk about a close shave? This is about as close as it can get. Take a look at that. Right into the brim. Nope. Buy yourself a lottery ticket, bud. That is luck. And that is amazing luck, if I've ever seen it. Because that, if it had just gone like a few millimeters further up, if it was coming in just a few millimeters further up, it would have pierced through his ball cap, hit him in the head, pierced his skull, and he'd be dead, or at least severely injured. Wow, that's a close shave. Russian troops ended up capturing 4 Ukrainian BTRs. However, they're pretty much all unusable. Only one actually started up. They seem to have been stripped of everything that is really good on them. Basically, most of their engines were stripped from parts, with the exception of one which actually started in place. All of their guns, munitions, basically anything that was usable. These things seem to have been used for parts to keep other Ukrainian military vehicles running there on the front. They seem to have been very well cannibalized, and I don't think outside of maybe the one that they'll actually be usable by either side for any duration of the war. In fact, the only way that they would be usable is with an extensive overhaul, but we can actually see them here.
Вот раз, два, три, четыре, все трофейные, да? Да. А в каком, ты говоришь, движок от БМП? Вот сейчас. И всего их 7 в Украине, да? Да, 7. И один уже у нас. Да. А еще хуй знает у кого. Ну это все такие же, как он. Уже подуставший, понятно. Вот этот, да? Они... Кровать какую-то наварили. Ой, нихуя себе. Как положено. Салон, в принципе, такой же. По-другому чуть дымы расположены. У нас сзади башни, у них по бокам они поставили. Двигатель. Сейчас я там побачу. Так. Полезли к двиглу, блядь. Он один, получается, движок стоит, не два? Бля, ну да, один. Один, но БМП, да? Да. Здесь, блядь. Нихуя себе, бля. И как же он, блядь, пуляет, наверное, я ебу нахуй.
Once again, these things have basically been just completely scrapped for parts at this point, and they don't even have guns in them, so pretty much completely useless. Now, Robert Schulk says if they still have it, the U.S. used cluster munitions in the Kuwait War, also known as the Desert Storm in '91, that places mines on runways to delay them from repairing them. So the U.S. used cluster munitions in order to crater runways. That was really the U.S.'s. That's really how the U.S. really keeps people from fixing runways, cratering them. And then my understanding is that there were some mines that were placed there, but for the most part, mines were left out of the war in Iraq specifically for that reason, because it was a liberation of Kuwait. Now they did use. The thing is that Al Jaber Air Base basically immediately became ineffective. I actually spent quite a significant amount of time at Al Jaber Air Base in Kuwait, and Al Jaber, it's the thing about it is the bunkers that are there. They're the huge, massive concrete bunkers that all have giant holes in them. all of them have giant holes in them. The United States used bunker busting munitions and actually pierced directly through these. They're built by, my understanding, the French, and there's apparently according to legend, there's an ongoing lawsuit between Kuwait and France regarding these, as Kuwait had just built these, and they said that they were not rated. France said in this lawsuit that they were not rated for American munitions. So that's apparently how they won the lawsuit. Zach Jeffers says, haven't the U.S. used cluster munitions in Serbia during the NATO intervention? No. Not to my understanding from what I have read. Now, I wasn't alive during most of Yugoslavia, the breakup of Yugoslavia and the intervention there. It wasn't a NATO intervention, by the way. It was actually... the United Nations Security Council passed several resolutions, and one of those was actually to use the use of force inside of places within Serbia, Kosovo, and Bosnia and Herzegovina after the breakup of Yugoslavia. Then, at the request of the UN peacekeeping forces, which were allowed to use the use of force on these security protection zones, they actually ended up using calling in NATO airstrikes, which is where that NATO campaign came in. It was actually a UN established no-fly zone and a UN established safety zones that were then protected by NATO aircraft when they were required. Now, as has been looked up by Riley here, it says that both the U.S. and Britain have acknowledged using cluster bombs in Yugoslavia already. Okay, so they did use them. Very fair enough. Once again, I'm not an expert regarding Yugoslavia, but I've read enough to have a general idea what was going on. But my understanding is that a lot of these were used on air defense systems within Yugoslavia. That's mostly what was being called in on for targets, as well as mortar batteries and artillery batteries by the Serbs, and on both sides. So I can't extensively talk about it with intelligence, but apparently they did. So I'm not going to try and disregard facts there. So very well. As we continue here, we still see the Ukrainian Air Force continuing its sorties. A sortie is a military flight, is all that means. They continue to operate very heavily with both fixed and rotary air wings, meaning jets and their helicopters, and this helps keep the skies of Ukraine contested. Neither side maintains any kind of overall air superiority throughout the entirety of Ukraine. They mostly maintain localized air superiority in areas where they already occupy much of the ground. Once you get up to the fronts, the entire airspace is contested. Most of that is done the wonderful help of Ukrainian air defense systems, both manpads and those larger air defense systems as well, but also the Ukrainian Air Force, which statistically should have been completely wiped out and was at a numerical massive disadvantage on paper. The Ukrainian Air Force has continued to fly throughout the duration of the war and has inspired a lot of things, including the Goes to Kyiv and a bunch of other stuff. So quite an extensive air campaign, and we still see that over and over again as they continue to conduct sorties here to the front lines, continue to conduct air patrols, and continue to shoot down both Russian aircraft and also do strikes on Russian ground forces as well. So we can go ahead and take a look at a couple of these MiG-29s, Fulcrums, that are currently flying over Ukraine. And as we can see here, a couple of those MiG-29 Fulcrums. There seems to be a flight of them, 2 ships, and they're on their way to the front. And that's coming from Ilya Ponomarenko, who's actually a reporter with the Kyiv Independent. And in Hadar, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant was shelled again. So the thing is that Russia controls the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. They have for some time. If you were watching Flicker 530 stream at the opening part of the war, the live stream is actually there from the CCTV camera footage at the Hadar nuclear facility when they took it. And there was some rather extensive combat within the administration buildings and a large fire, but nothing was damaged. Since then, the Russian Federation, there has been actual drone footage to show the Russian Federation using it as a military base, using it as a shield, because to strike at it would cause a massive nuclear catastrophe, basically giving the Russian forces here an immunity. We know that Ukraine likely has struck it at least once with the use of kamikaze drones, most notably either the, I want to say it's the Phoenix Ghost system, which is also reportedly a kamikaze drone, and they have pretty extensively done some damage to some of the outlying areas. Reportedly, prior to that, the Russian Federation had dug in and mined the area, and also set up artillery systems within the compound itself, as was being reported by locals. Since then, two separate occasions now, or at least our understanding is that two separate occasions that have been reported thus far widely, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant has been hit. This time, it seems that it may have been a false flag incident, and there's some evidence to back that. While it's not enough to draw any kind of conclusion as to who did fire this, it gives us some idea. The thing is that according to the press service of the state enterprise NNEGC, also known as Energetom, which is basically the Ukrainian Energy Commission for them, they say that, quote, Russian troops shelled the territory of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, hitting not far from the first power unit. Pumping station and communal sewage were damaged. Extended smoke was recorded nearby. We actually have some of that footage for you here. The UN Secretary General actually ended up speaking on this, and his name is Antonio Gutierrez, who said in a press statement, any potential damage to Zaporizhzhia or any other nuclear facilities in Ukraine or elsewhere could lead to catastrophic consequences, not only for the immediate vicinity, but for the region and beyond. This is wholly unacceptable. And he's completely correct. If anybody remembers, for instance, the Chernobyl incident in the northern part of Ukraine, that caused a widespread disaster for areas across the region, especially inside the Chernobyl exclusion zone, which is still highly radioactive to the point that it has killed several Russian troops reportedly when they had dug in trenches within the exclusion zone in the highly irradiated soil. The damage is quite severe as battles were taking place up in that region, and has stirred concerns of the re-energizing of radioactivity within the region, which was at that point, which is at the point of the just prior to the invasion, subsiding as it was being buried under new fresh topsoil. Now, the evidence that Russia is shelling the power plant is the fact that launches can be heard with the ordnance landing about 3 seconds immediately after you hear the launch of the weapon system. And the reason for it, and the reason that's important, is because of the speed of sound. The speed of sound is roughly 343 meters per second, meaning at about 2.9 seconds to 3 seconds, it has traveled almost 1 kilometer. Now, 1 kilometer is not a very far distance, but that should tell you that whoever shot this is likely very close, and the nearest Ukrainian forces are on the other side of the Dnipro River, within Dniprovets Oblast, much further away. We can actually take this out and show you. So if you pull this over here, that's what, 9 miles right there. So that's much further than 1 kilometer, as a kilometer is actually shorter than 1 mile. Quite a distance. I think it's probably right about here. They would have to shoot them from pretty much inside Enerhodar to actually successfully be that close, damn near within actually the facility itself. But we can actually hear some of this as we take a look at this nuclear facility.
Где летит? Блядь. Ёлка. Да, пробежался. Хватит! Ой. Пиздец!
What this insinuates, based off of at least the auditory reports that we are hearing, is the fact that Russia may be creating a false flag incident in order to blame Ukraine, which is the most likely person to actually shell Russian positions at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, and insinuating that they are attempting to create a nuclear catastrophe in order to undermine the narrative that they currently are maintaining as the moral high ground here in this war, and also putting the world at risk, which violates a multitude of international treaties and international humanitarian law. So yeah, not a good look. But if the audio is in fact correct in the reports, both the launches and the impacts are there in Hangar, it does suggest that those ordinances were fired from within 1 kilometer of their impact sites, meaning that the only forces capable of conducting such a strike on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is the Russian Federation themselves. So once again, insinuating a false flag incident, unfortunately. Just across, and one of the reasons why we can suggest that possibly the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is being used as an artillery installation and a military base is because Nikopol has suffered under a significant number of attacks since those reports initially began several different weeks ago. And we continue to see that even today as deadly shelling occurred in Nikopol. According to Valentin Reznichenko, the head of the Dniprovetsk Regional Military Administration, quote, rocket attacks on the Dniprovetsk region on August the 11th. In the city of Nikopol, 3 people were killed and 9 citizens were injured, including a 13-year-old girl. More than 40 local high-rise buildings were damaged, 5 apartments were destroyed, 3 schools, several shops, garages, and private cars were also damaged. And we do actually have images coming from the attack there on Nikopol. So as you can see, complete destruction on some of these locations. These seem to have been a little bit of smaller ordinances, most likely grad systems, which ended up impacting these areas and using them as saturation bombardment. The use of the BM-21 grad system, which fires 40 122mm Katyusha rockets in a barrage salvo, is considered a saturation munition. They're dumbfire rockets and are not precision guided as other MLRS systems, especially supplied by NATO, are. Zach Jeffers says has there been any more updates regarding grain shipments from the port of Odessa? We're hearing some things where there seems to be a little bit of a conflicting report. Some have claimed up to 12 ships have left thus far. At this point, our understanding is that 2 more are supposedly going to be leaving tomorrow. That's what reports are currently leading to. We haven't yet to confirm it. But reportedly 2 ships have been cleared to leave the port of Odessa tomorrow, fully laden with grain. They'll be going to Turkey, and just off the coast of Turkey in international waters, they'll be inspected by that collaborative team of Ukrainians, Russians, and Turks, and they'll be going through verifying that the cargo is as stated, and before it continues on to its final destination. So hopefully we'll be able to actually update you on that tomorrow. As we jump down here into the Kherson Oblast, there's no more real updates out of Crimea right now. Our understanding is that the backup is still ongoing as Russian tourists are fleeing for their lives out of Crimea right now. There has been some infrared photographs, but nothing really more detail-wise has been released regarding the strike that occurred there in Crimea. But in the Kherson Oblast, just outside of Crimea, it would appear that more partisan activity has been conducted, as for whatever reason, it would appear that a large electrical power line that goes from the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant through the Kherson Oblast and into Crimea has actually been toppled, likely by Ukrainian partisans operating within the Kherson Oblast, which we know is a hotbed of partisan activity, and this would cut off a lot of energy supply to Crimea. And once again, the partisans within these regions, Melitopol and within the Kherson Oblast, they are conducting a lot of different things. These partisans do a wide range of things. Most of their endeavors will likely never be heard until the occupation has ended and they have been liberated. but the partisans are assassinating collaborators. They're killing off occupational troops. They are damaging and destroying critical infrastructures, whether that's logistical or communicational lines, and providing a lot of intelligence for Ukrainian armed forces to conduct some of these precision strikes and identify pretty major targets in places such as Kherson, Novokakhovka, and other areas throughout this occupied region of Ukraine, especially further behind the lines. And we can actually see some of that here. Yeah, that's not good. If you have energy trying to, send energy into Crimea, that's not good. And it takes a lot to bring one of those down. So, likely the work of partisans at this point. Human Shields Part 2 up here in Novokakhovka after Russian grads were seen firing right outside of a coffee shop in the center of Novokakhovka here in the Kherson Oblast. At this point, thank God Amnesty International hasn't seen this because they'd probably be losing their minds considering their latest report. More explosions were reported tonight after dark as a response was sent. Note that at this point, most of the Ukrainian strikes are trying to avoid casualties, though. Riley says it's very well grounded, at least, in regards to the power pole. And I thought my puns were bad. But as we can see here is that Russian BM-21 grad systems firing just outside of a coffee shop in the middle of downtown Novokakhovka. It is quite loud, so you might want to turn your audio down for these. As I said, the video is quite loud, and for me to say that, considering I'm partially deaf, is quite amazing. So, when I do give a warning like that, you might want to heed it. As I reportedly hear, some people in the chat didn't quite turn it down enough. Anyway, as we continue here, there are more successful strikes in the Kherson Oblast. This is coming from Operational Command South. Quote, the armed forces of Ukraine destroyed 3 Russian 152mm self-propelled howitzers, 2 A-65 Mista Bs, 2 enemy command posts, a command and observation post, and an ammunition depot in the Kherson Oblast on August the 10th. Reminder, a lot of these official statements come out 24 hours after the fact, as operational security is of utmost importance in a war zone. So please bear with us as we have to kind of report on some stuff a little bit late. It is a little bit of a fluid situation there. Reportedly, one person is dead and 2 are wounded after shelling here in the Kherson Oblast. This is coming from the press service of the Kherson Regional Police. Quote, Russian occupiers shelled the Kherson region on August the 11th. 1 woman was killed, 2 Ukrainian citizens were injured. Local private houses were damaged. Mykolaiv seems to have at least reportedly escaped shelling tonight, though I'm sure they did not. But that's actually everything inside the country of Ukraine. Do not worry, there's plenty of stuff ongoing outside of Ukraine too, including some rather big developments inside of areas such as Russia. And we're actually going to start over here with this point that I actually moved out of Ukraine earlier, as I seem to have misplaced it. But it can really go anywhere, as this part of the Trans-Siberian Railway here in the east. Russian equipment has flowed far from the Far East over here on the Trans-Siberian Railway and into the eastern part of Russia. Russia as it's being staged to be moved into Ukraine. Russia continues to pull from massive stockpiles it has within its country, with a lot of inadequate equipment that's been sitting in storage for some time now, retrofitting them rather quickly and then shipping them to the front lines in order to be used there on the front and to replenish major material losses that they're suffering as casualties continue to mount in the ongoing war effort. The issue is that Russian forces also need to crew these vehicles, and their logistical network is being excessively strained to the point of total collapse as they are unable to continuously supply fuel, food, and ammunition to the troops and equipment that they are sending there to the front. And reminder that manpower is still a major issue for the Russian Federation. They're trying to stir up some volunteer battalions, and they are currently training some reportedly in the Moscow area. However, they still need troops in order to crew these vehicles as they continually take casualties amongst their manpower forces as these vehicles continuously get destroyed by Ukrainian anti-armored weapons. But we can see a lot of this over here as several large numbers of equipment have been seen on flatbed cars on the Trans-Siberian Railway. Based off the snorkeling gear alone, I can tell you most of these are actually T-80s that they appear to have pulled out of storage in the Far East and are bringing over here to the front. And quite a major development has occurred in the Moscow Oblast, and that is the fact that a military barracks was on fire. A large one. Reportedly with conscripts inside. So a large number, we don't know how many have been killed or wounded or anything like that, but an entire building area is engulfed in flames as of late last night and early this morning. The cause of the blaze is currently unknown, but we do have a video of it for you guys here. So that's quite significant if that is the case. It was reportedly housing conscripts there. Amongst as many problems as Russia has, they're preparing for a shortage of French fries, as the world's largest French fries producer has refused to supply any products to Russia in mid-July. Russian restaurants say that they have officially ran out of suitable potatoes. A very interesting problem to have. Earlier, Russia removed French fries from the hijacked McDonald's menu for the very same reason. And we're getting this from the Gazeta.ru. So if you guys want to go and check that out, you most certainly can. As we jump over here just a little bit further, over here to Vektrinaburg, we're seeing that Ukrainian colors appeared in front of a government building. A quiet but strong message was sent to the local government as no to war graffiti has appeared in front of their government buildings overnight. Yeah, that's usually not what you want to see if you're in the middle of an authoritarian regime, is people doing this. We do know that there is a lot more activity, especially amongst youth, in kind of a quieter protest. We've also seen things such as Molotov cocktails being thrown into conscripting offices all across the country of Russia. Massive fires with no real explanation as to how they started have occurred at many important and strategic locations, such as many of the R&D centers, research and development centers for Russian ballistic missiles as well, including at several major prestigious Russian universities where they had some of those labs. In contrast to the conceptual pro-war art that has been appeared around the city, the government has failed to understand this hidden message. As you can see, they even have Z's on trash cans. Well, that's fine, because that's literal trash. And Wagner ads are around the city. The W Orchestra is waiting for you. Note the accordion in the middle of what looks like a washing machine, by the way. The Wagner Group is a mercenary group used heavily by the Russian Federation. The Wagner Group, much like U.S. counterparts, such as what would have been Blackwater PMC Corporation, private military corporation, Triple Canopy, or Vetrus, they are all the same kind of thing, except that for the United States, they are private military contractors, and they mostly stand posts in relatively safe places and embassies. That's just the fact of the matter. The Wagner Group is very different in the respect that it goes out and actually conducts clandestine operations throughout the globe in order to be used as plausible deniability. 2018, in February the 8th, I believe, 2018. The 300 Wagner mercenaries were either killed and wounded, as well as 100 pro-Assad regime fighters down in what is known as the Battle of Qasham in the Omar oil fields after attacking a joint Kurdish and U.S. outpost housing Special Operations Forces and United States Marines that were down there, and they were bombed for quite literally 3.5 hours until they were completely wiped out and had to run. So that is the kind of thing that they did. The thing of the Wagner Group is it's heavily utilized by the Russian military because they have plausible deniability. Russia said we didn't attack the Americans. It wasn't the Russians. We didn't tell them to go do that, and then it diverted an international incident. But as you can see here, that is the Wagner ad. Something tells me they're lacking manpower too, as they've taken rather significant losses in Ukraine as well. Jump over here into Latvia, over in Riga, where Latvia has actually declared Russia a terrorist state. The parliament has officially declared Russia a state sponsor of terrorism amid the war in Ukraine. The parliament declared that its neighbors' actions amount to the genocide of the Ukrainian people, and the text was supported by all 67 lawmakers who took part in the vote in the 100-seat Sejm. MPs also called on other European countries to express the same opinion. And you can actually see here, this is coming from Dmitro Kuleba, who gave his grateful thanks to the Latvian Parliament regarding all of this. So, pretty cool indeed. That comes as calls for declaring Russia a state sponsor of terrorism have increased quite significantly over the last few weeks, and is even very vocal inside of the U.S. Congress. Berlin will continue to issue visas to Russian citizens, according to German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, that he could hardly imagine to stop the issuance of visas to the Russians, and that he explained it was not ordinary Russians who were responsible for the outbreak of hostilities, but the leadership of the country. Here in Copenhagen, 1.5 billion euros has been raised for Ukraine. This is in addition to already aid packages that have been sent to Ukraine over the last few days, weeks, and months. It's yet another international conference up here in Copenhagen, which was attended by many separate nations. It's an extension of the Ramstein conference. In fact, this is the whole purpose of these conferences is to assist Ukraine and its military with equipment and money for long-term duration. Everyone in the world, including Ukraine, is expecting this to be a long, drawn-out campaign, and this war is not going to be ending overnight, likely anytime soon, unfortunately, as that is. So the rest of the world is trying to, prepare in order to continue that overall. So we can see a lot of the different stuff coming out of this, including even President Zelensky in his address tonight addressed this as well.
Українці, українки, короткі підсумки дня. Взяв участь в роботі конференції донорів в Копенгагені. Це 26 держав-партнерів України. Країни Європи, Сполучені Штати, Японія, Австралія, Нова Зеландія. Вони заснували ще один формат на продовження добре відомих зустрічей на авіабазі «Рамштайн». Цей формат про довгострокову підтримку. Це зброя, боєприпаси, тренування військових, розмінування, відновлення на звільненій території. Вже Маємо перші результати конференції. Данія одразу по відкриттю зустрічі оголосила про новий пакет підтримки України обсягом 110 мільйонів євро. Загалом конференція зібрала тільки за день 1,5 мільярди євро, які будуть витрачені в тому числі на виробництво життєво необхідних боєприпасів. До речі, це вагомий плюс до тих кредитних гарантій на 4 мільярди доларів, які були раніше надані Сполученими Штатами, щоб посилити нашу оборонну взаємодію з партнерами в постачанні для української армії.
So quite a lot of aid going to Ukraine. Also, debt collectors or nations trying to collect debts that with loans that have already been given to Ukraine have frozen that until 2024. So they deferred any debt repayment until 2024 to allow Ukraine to not immediately default on most of these, as they are currently engulfed in a major war. That's not the only thing. As we work our way up here to Norway, Norway will also be helping to train Ukrainian troops. This comes immediately after several nations, including Finland, Sweden, and Canada, all have decided to join and assist the United Kingdom with training additional troops from Ukraine. These are fresh, brand new recruits into the Ukrainian military. They're receiving pretty much an expedited NATO-style military training on their weapon systems and military tactics. They will be then sent back to Ukraine to be then pushed into the war effort there, where they will be highly needed. And the United Kingdom thus far has stated that they will be training up to 10,000 Ukrainian troops. So, according to Defense Minister Bjorn Erogrom, quote, the Ukrainian forces are in dire need of further training and education. We will send our instructors for basic training of military personnel, as some other countries have already done. It's not the only thing the United Kingdom is doing, as they are training those 10,000 troops alongside coalition partners. The United Kingdom is planning on sending more M270 Mars 2's missile systems, the predecessor to the HIMARS system, but uses the very similar and the same ammunition as the HIMARS does. These precision strike tracked vehicles, lightly armored tracked vehicles, were reportedly going to be sent, as well as a substantial amount of ammunition, according to the United Kingdom's Ministry of Defense and the United Kingdom's embassy there in Kyiv, which has already been very widely accepted. Once again, this is coming from the Ministry of Defense themselves in their official Twitter here for the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom will send further multiple launch rocket systems and precision-guided M31A1 missiles to Ukraine to help the country defend itself against Russia's illegal invasion, according to Defense Secretary B. Wallace. And, of course, the General Staff of Ukraine was very happy to hear this. This is their official Twitter as well. This is the Ukrainian General Staff of the Armed Forces, who were very happy to hear about this. And in a little bit of a different turning point in news, here in France, the Loire River in France, which is the longest river in the country, is drying up. News footage showed the water level of the Loire has dropped so low in some places that residents can wade from one bank to the other. The lack of sufficient rainfall across the region this summer has led to drought conditions across a wide swath of northern Europe. Unfortunately, this is a result, most likely, of quite severe climate change, and you can see quite the levels that the river has dropped here. France is not the only ones currently suffering under rather severe droughts, as the Middle East is as well, and in places such as Ethiopia, Somalia, Djibouti, all of these locations in the Horn of Africa, Yemen as well, which we'll be getting into here shortly. But over here, between Turkey and Syria, there's been an interesting development. According to our sources, the Turkish foreign minister is receiving quite a bit of backlash. Reportedly, the foreign minister for Turkey was talking with his Syrian counterpart, in which he stated that peace in Syria, it is necessary to unite the power of the Syrian government and proxies controlled by Ankara, and the basically pro-Turkish forces controlled by Ankara, and in turn offered to arrange negotiations between Assad and Erdogan. But the Turkish foreign minister rejected the request. The statement has caused pretty sharp backlash in Turkish-controlled areas there in northern Syria, and the commanders of Turkish groups, pro-Turkish organizations, have expressed indignation, feeling that they could be thrown. Large-scale protests are planned against Turkish forces in the areas because of the statements. So basically, the foreign minister said, no, we're just actually going to fight this one out, and the people that support the Turks are not very happy.
تصالح لاستسلام وبدنا نسقط النظام لا 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 تصالح لاستسلام وبدنا نسقط النظام الله أكبر الله أكبر تكبير الله أكبر.
Needless to say, they're not very happy about the recent turn of events there in Syria. As you dump down here into Sana'a, which is in Yemen, as many parts of Yemen are without drinking water at this point, including the capital. Hundreds of thousands of people are forced to undergo tests just to get drinking water.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. يومنا هذا الخميس الموافق 4 رجب 1441 هجرية. تم توفير هذا الوائد الماء إلى وادي الجندية قرية الدول على نفقة فاعل الخير، جزاه الله خير وغفر له ولوالديه وأسقاه الله من حوض جناته وجعلها الله في ميزان حسناته. اللهم اجزكم خير واغفر لكم ولوالديكم وأسقاه.
So, needless to say, the situation in these areas is not generally pretty good. In fact, most of the Middle East and, like I said, the Horn of Africa are under pretty serious droughts. In fact, in Somalia alone, 90% of the country is actually dry at this point, and millions of people, especially children under the age of 5, are going to be the most severely affected by what's ongoing there. So this has impacted Iraq as well. In fact, there on the Tigris and Euphrates, they have almost completely dried up at this point. And the water down near Basra is no longer has enough force to actually flow into the Persian Gulf. Instead, the Persian Gulf is actually flowing back into the areas surrounding Basra and upriver, salinating all of this water, replacing the fresh water with seawater, making it no longer drinking water or anything potable for people to use in their daily lives, such as cooking, drinking, washing themselves, etc. In Kabul, the Islamic State conducted a suicide attack. A suicide bomber broke into the home of one of the prominent Taliban ideologues, Rahimullah Haqqani, and he ended up killing him. It is known that Haqqani had an ardent opponent on the Salafis and the Islamic State, as well as supporter in the Pakistani Taliban de Pakistan. The Taliban propagandists considered him a threat to the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. The Islamic State did officially claim responsibility for the attacks, and the attack was carried out by one suicide bomber named Khalid Lugari, who carried a bomb in a prosthetic leg, and his bodyguards died along with Haqqani. This has caused pretty wide resonance among the Taliban caliphate there. And that is the individual who they did end up killing. That is the ideologue. And that is the Islamic State's official statement claiming responsibility for the attack. Here in Taipei, Taiwan has rejected China's proposal, one country, two systems model, proposed by Beijing in a white paper published this week. The self-ruled island's foreign ministry said this on Thursday, or today. Only Taiwan's people can decide its future, said the ministry spokeswoman Joanne Au told the news conference in Taipei, the capital of the nation. So once again, tensions continue between China and Taiwan as the tensions throughout the entire Pacific, Indo-Pacific region continue to rise as China continuously gets a little bit more and more aggressive, kind of bolstered by the fact that there are allies with Russia, and there seems to be some collaboration in some areas there. And in North Korea, oh man, here in Pyongyang, Kim Jong-un has declared victory over COVID-19. So apparently Kim Jong-un and his sister have declared victory over COVID-19. They indicated that they had also caught the virus while vowing deadly retaliation because they basically blame South Korea for giving them the virus and causing the whole outbreak. So Kim Jong-un has ordered the lifting of maximum anti-epidemic measures imposed back in May through North Korea and maintained steel-strong anti-epidemic barrier and intensifying anti-epidemic work until the end of the global health crisis. North Korea has never confirmed how many people actually caught COVID, but apparently because it lacks the means to conduct widespread testing, instead it has reported daily numbers of patients with fever. Actually, those rose some 4.77 million, but has registered no new cases since July 29th. The fact is that during Kim Jong-un's sister speech there in Pyongyang, she described his personal battle, as well as her personal battle with the virus, and made the audience apparently very emotional to the point that they made some cry. I'm sure there was nothing to do with what happens if you didn't cry. And at the end of the speech, she also promised to exterminate South Korea. Fantastic.
정치들 이 방역 전쟁의 나날 거열 속에 심히 앓으시면서도 자신이 끝까지 책임져야 하는 인민들 생각으로 한순간도 자리에 누우실 수 없었던 원수님과 무서운 열병을 앓으면서도 원수님 계시기에 우리는 꼭 이 사선의 거비를 넘고 무조건 살 수 있다는 옥촉의 믿음을 심신의 불사약으로 채우며 병마와 싸워 이긴 인민들의 모습은
Very emotional. Very emotional. Aren't they supposed to believe like Kim Jong-un's like a god or something, like a demigod or something? Like, he's not supposed to get sick. Nobody in the family is supposed to get sick. They're supposed to be like literal gods. Okay, whatever. Anyway, if you want to read more about that, you can actually go and find the whole thing there on Reuters, which we have linked down on that bullet point. My God, Australia. While Australia is known for many things, you have to understand that they're probably best known for some of the wildlife that's there. About everything in Australia will kill you, or at least attempt to. It's a very interesting country, and I feel so sorry for any Australians who may be watching this. But it would seem that Australia did join the fight against Russia today. As they sent one of their best fighters there against the Russian embassy. They tried to storm the Russian embassy. In fact, a kangaroo appeared to attempt to storm the Russian embassy there. So the marsupials certainly stopped at the gates of the Russian embassy there here in Australia. And it made several attempts to squeeze through the bars, jumping on the fence. However, due to his size, he also seems to fail. The saboteur actually end up fleeing the scene. As a result of the attempts of unauthorized access and storming of the Russian embassy, neither the fence nor the kangaroo appear to have been damaged or injured. But we do have a video of this wonderful, wonderful event here in Australia for you today. It's good to see that Australia's joining the fight against Russia there. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Also, kangaroos are adorable, but I'm not interested in getting any close to one. Very close to one of those. Once again, I don't think there's a single creature on the entire island of Australia, on the entire continent there, that would not try to kill me in a heartbeat. And that's actually it regarding most of the big kind of news that going throughout the world. But we do have some stuff to try and kind of balance out the more kind of dark side of this. Every single day we try and look for good stuff. We try and look for interesting stuff that end on a good note, on a high note, every single day here on the channel. And so all of these notes are marked in purple here on the map. And the first one we have is a pretty massive expanse of hydrothermal vents have been discovered deep in the Pacific Ocean. This is actually on the Pacific Rise, the East Pacific Rise. And what it is scientists sent underwater robots into the depths in the Pacific, about 1.5 miles or 2.5 kilometers beneath the surface of the ocean, and discovered something rather unexpected. A football field size expanse of towering hydrothermal vents have cropped up in an area. Pretty much these are like underwater chimneys. This is considered one of the points in which life first began, is these hydrothermal vents. And the newfound vent field is located about 200 miles, about 321 kilometers off the coast of western Mexico in the East Pacific Rise, a range of underwater volcanoes that extends nearly from the Gulf of California to Antarctica. The vents stand roughly 30 to 40 feet or 10 to 12 meters tall and gush black mineral-filled water, which reaches temperatures of up to 694 degrees Fahrenheit or 368 degrees Celsius. Such high temperatures hint that the volcanic eruption may occur at the site here in the next few years. But it's pretty fascinating. These things are pretty fascinating. They believe that this is actually where life pretty much began, is at around hydrothermal vents several billion years ago. And we jump up here to my favorite point of the night, personally, and that is coming up here to Birmingham, where paleontologists have pretty much uncovered that T-Rex had to have small eyes to accommodate its rather large bite. Based on the analysis of 410 fossils of reptile specimens in the Mesozoic period, about 252 to 66 million years ago, scientists conclude that T-Rex and other carnivores in similar ilk evolved evolved smaller, narrow eyes over time, possibly to compensate for their bites becoming more forceful. New research lends the support of the idea that the brain and sensory organs, such as eyes, must adapt to accommodate animals' primary feeding strategies. For his analysis, the study's author, Stephen Lachenschlager, selected hundreds of skulls with pristinely preserved eye sockets. The 410 specimens included a wide range of species, from crocodilians to hulking herbivores like Triceratops to flesh-eating theropods such as the T-Rex or Tyrannosaurus rex and the Tarbosaurus Batar. And comparing all these skulls, Lachenschlager spotted several patterns. Most of the creatures, especially herbivores, had circular eye sockets. However, as you move through the Mesozoic period, the orbit shapes of larger-headed carnivores began kind of morphing into oval and keyhole-shaped openings. These models reveal that during a simulated bite, keyhole-shaped eye sockets deformed far less than circular ones because they directed the force of the bite toward a robust bone behind the eye socket itself, which is pretty cool. And you can actually see some of this right here. So those are some of the scans and some of the tests that they had conducted with this. But if you want more on this, you can actually read the actual full article there on nature.com, or you can also check it out on Live Science. So pretty cool. A lot of different concepts when it comes to T-Rex eyesight. A lot of, of course, the famous thing from Jurassic Park, they can't see you if you don't move. That's entirely false. T-Rex would kill you regardless. As we have now learned, they had extremely good eyesight, and they could also run at up to 65 miles an hour. So that's terrifying to think about, that you would be pretty much screwed. Yeah, pretty bad. In fact, there's only one ancestor of the mighty T-Rex living with us still today. And the closest ancestor to the Tyrannosaurus rex today is actually the chicken. So next time you are ever wondering if you're ever walking around on the earth with dinosaurs, just remember the chicken falls within that category. But with that, that is everything in the news today. Quite a bit of stuff ongoing, especially when it comes to Ukraine and coalition support regarding it, especially Australia down there, definitely jumping in on the efforts there, quite literally. Hopping along into that. But there's quite a lot of stuff that's been happening, and a lot of it, unfortunately, is relatively bad stuff. As, of course, I said, this is pretty much what makes the news. And the thing is that we are able to be the community that can give back. We are the news that gives back directly to the very issues we talk about here on this stream. And the reason we're able to do that is through you guys. You guys have been awesome. You guys have given us an absolute ton of support, and I cannot thank you enough for it. That you've made so many milestones happen over the last couple of days. It blows our minds, truthfully, and I can't thank you enough about that. But please check out the video description below and check out all the different organizations we have listed down there. That's really what this is all about. 100% of everything we do is for charity, and we're never doing super chats on this channel. We're never pushing merchandising. 100% of everything we do, we're going to put a fundraiser on every single stream we do as soon as we are capable of doing so, and we hope that you guys will continue to help us in this endeavor and continue to give us the support and give these organizations, most importantly, the support as we continue doing this stream for this foreseeable future. Once again, I can't thank you guys enough for supporting not just us, but these organizations. And if you can't give a lot to these organizations, give a little. If you can't give anything at all, that's totally okay too. Help us try and grow this channel and continue to do amazing things here by giving us a like and subscribe and letting your friends know about us. The more people that end up coming here and joining the community, the likes and subscribes, that brings more people to these videos and to these streams. And the more people that are here, the bigger of an impact we'll have overall in helping people throughout the entire world. And I don't think there's any better thing to be doing, here on YouTube than actually just trying to help people and try and bring a little bit of good back into a world that seems to have decided to go to hell. So pretty good altogether. But thank you for the amazing support. Thank you for the continuing support. If you have more organizations, please jump onto our Discord and check out the community on there and let a staff member know. Give us that link to that organization. We're constantly looking to add more. We want to fill all 5,000 characters on the YouTube description box with nothing but links for organizations, and give us a short summary regarding that along with that link, and we'll start the vetting process. Remember, 80% or more of all of these charities donations actually go directly to their programs, so they're actually going to helping people as opposed to paying those salaries and administration costs, which brings so much controversy when it comes to charities. And so with that, I hope that you and your family and your friends are safe, and if not, I hope you find that safety and security in the very near future. Please, I hope you enjoy your Friday. Congratulations, you have officially made it to the weekend. One more day, and you get to relax on your wonderful days off. And of course, you can always end your Friday and begin your weekend with us here at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Central, here on the New News, as we will be streaming tomorrow night as well. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you over there on the Discord and within the community. Hope to see you back once again tomorrow night. My name is Paul from the New News, and have a fantastic rest of your night, guys, and have a wonderful Friday.
Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. Відстріляно волновахи, чудно кличі, діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТРО. Нам не треба ні конфлікту, ні війни. Та ми готові всіх вас звать до сатани. Тисячі вже полягло, і все більше шлейфуйло. Тут для них нема нічого, крім труни. Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. Відстріляно волновахи, чудно кличі, діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТРО. Вызволять пришел, братишка, ну привет. На моей земле тебе один ответ. Нашим людям с кирпичом, даже танки и бочок. Вам не взять нас и за 100 000 лет. Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. багном. Від стрия до волновахи чутно клич, ідіть нахуй, тут працює ЗСУ і ТРО.